Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I figured I'd make a quick video kind of just showcasing the most broken builds in Path of Exile 2. Probably the most broken builds that we're ever going to see in the history of this game. I spent an enormous amount of time kind of perfecting these, and I wanted to showcase what that would look like, but also because it's kind of near the end of the season, I figured it'd be cool to kind of make this video as like a time capsule to kind of go back and remember how absolutely disgusting and just broken, just straight up broken these builds are. Grinding Gear Games has been on record many times saying that they never want builds to be pretty much as powerful as we are at this point, so in the future I would anticipate that we probably won't have builds of this power level for quite some time. So I figured it'd be cool to make a video to showcase what is really possible if you just throw an infinite amount of currency at some of the more crazy things in the game and what that actually ends up looking like. After playing almost every single build personally, in my opinion, the two most overpowered builds are the Stat Sacker Gemling Legionnaire and the Choir of the Storm Blood Mage Auto Bomber build. There are other variations of Auto Bomber builds as well, so you can kind of lump those all into one category, with Stat Sacking Gemling Legionnaire definitely being the second. Today's video is sponsored by Crystal of Atlan, a brand new free-to-play MMO action ARPG set in a one-of-a-kind magic-punk world where magic and cutting-edge technology intertwine, offering a very unique and pleasing aesthetic. Crystal of Atlan also offers extremely smooth and fluid combat, which is my favorite part of the game. It's just an absolute blast of play because of how seamless everything just combos together, especially with the refreshing air combos that the game has to offer. Not to mention how many different classes there are available to play, all of which are unlocked from the start, with just so many different skill combinations allowing for tons of skill expression and experimentation. Since it is an MMO, the game offers a ton of multiplayer elements, including co-op dungeons, which is by far my favorite activity, but also things like a guild fleet system that you've come to enjoy from other MMOs. Crystal of Atlan is available for pre-registration, and by pre-registering, inviting friends, and following the official SNS account, players can collect tickets for a chance to win prizes, including an iPhone 16 Pro Max, an Apple Watch Ultra 2, AirPods Max, even a PS5 Pro, and much more. There's even a milestone event where you unlock rewards progressively, and players who complete pre-registration can claim all of the unlocked rewards by linking their UID on the pre-registration page. Once a target milestone of 8 million is achieved, players are rewarded with a Legend Returns outfit and many other in-game rewards. Make sure to pre-register by using my link in the description, and a big thanks to Crystal of Atlan for sponsoring today's video. Starting off, we have the Gemling Legionnaire, which is my personal favorite build. This build does just an ungodly amount of damage, can absolutely annihilate pretty much any tier 4 boss with extreme ease, and you have the benefit of it being a one-button build where you pretty much just hold down right-click, you spin at the speed of light, and everything on your screen just annihilates, just gets blown up, which is extremely satisfying to play with. However, it is a very expensive build. The reason that it is so expensive and the way that it works is that we are stacking a ton of total flat stats, so we have like over 1,000 dexterity, intelligence, and strength, and the reason that this is so good, especially on a Gemling Legionnaire, is that we're using a lot of uniques that give us an increased benefit. My cat is going crazy. Increased benefit based on how many attributes we have. So we have Pillar of the Cage God, which gives us increased weapon damage per 5 strength and attack speed per 5 dexterity, and I have one that is corrupted, so I get 12% weapon damage per 5 strength, which ends up being one of the best ways to scale our actual damage. And then we get Hand of Wisdom in action for lightning damage per 10 intelligence, and then the area of effect per intelligence on Pillar of the Cage God works very nicely for our heralds to just blow up the whole screen. And then we use things like Warrior Invictus to give us percentage increased attributes, then Black Sun Crest, more percentage increased attributes, and then we get a ton of flat attributes via an Astramentus, just giving us, a ton of attributes, 117 to Dex, Strength, and Int. Then we get like a crazy ring like this with just a bunch of flat damage, but also, 18 attributes, Dex, Int, and then we also just have that mirrored with a Calandra's Touch here, so we just get basically 2 of these. Then we have that multiplied by the Ingenuity Belt, and you can see that if I just take off one ring, boom, that is 5 million DPS, because of how many attributes and how much flat damage is on this ring. And then the last piece of gear is just boots with just some random stats on it and Chaos Res, life, mana. And this build actually ends up being disgustingly tanky because you have the benefit while being a Gemling Legionnaire. The reason you want to be Gemling is because you get percentage increased attributes, just as little small passives here, but you also get inherent bonuses from Int, Strength, and Dex are doubled. So what this means is for every point of life, or for every point of strength, we get double the amount of normal life that it would give us. So because we have so much strength, I have 4,820 life, and then I also have 4,600 mana because of how much int I have, and that makes me extremely tanky because I'm using Mind Over Matter and the HP, so I have 10,000 effective life basically, and per dexterity we also get more accuracy rating, which turns into more attack speed because of Falcon Dive. And more attack speed actually with Tempest Flurry makes us run faster. So currently I'm at the lowest breakpoint that you can get to, which is 0.04 I believe for Tempest Flurry, and this is just allowing us to move as fast as possible, and the more dexterity we get, the more attack speed we get via a lot of stuff within the skill tree. Another benefit of Gemling is that you get 30% less mana cost. Tempest Flurry is actually quite expensive from a mana perspective, and we also just get a little bit of quality, which is nice as well. An alternative to Gemling Legionnaire, I believe, is the Warrior that gives you percentage increased effective like small passive nodes. That one is also pretty good. But Gemling ends up just being better, mainly because you just get so much survivability via enhanced effectiveness here. And we just tie everything together with the skill tree, so we basically just try to path for as many attributes as humanly possible while also getting a lot of nodes that are helpful for us. So Jack of all trades and polymathy are just absolutely insane for the build. And we just go up here, and then we go for a From Nothing diamond, so we can get passives in Radius of Resonance, which is up over here, which I'll showcase in a second. We go up here, get this accuracy rating, or increase attack speed per accuracy rating, and then we also just get a lot of accuracy passively. Then I have a Megalomaniac, which is going to give me pure power and pure energy. Pure power is nice because it gives us increased lightning damage per 10 int, which I have a lot of int, so this is a pretty significant damage increase. And then I also just get this node here, which is not too great, but it's basically just 10 intelligence, which is surprisingly a decent bit of damage for us. This build ends up scaling crit, which is the best way to scale pretty much any build in this game, so I get a lot of crit related stuff. And then right here we get even more attack speed per dexterity, and then just a whole bunch of flat dexterity, which is just going to give us a whole bunch of extra attack speed. And then just percentage increased dex, and we get a lot of skill gems, and I'll go over the gems in a sec. A lot of crit, and then I actually allocated Wildstorm on my amulet. Usually I would allocate Spaghettification, but because we have this From Nothing diamond down here, we are able to get all of these nodes without having to path. So I get this node here, this node here. This is very good for crit, but also we have a Against the Darkness, which gives us increased int and dex based on all the small or notables that we have. So I have this notable for crit and int and dex and int, and then another one for dex, int, dex, crit. Very, very good. And then we have Event Horizon, which is pretty useless, but we get Spaghettification, which is 7% increased attributes and even more dex and int. And then I quite like this node here because it's attack speed, reduced mana cost, so our skill doesn't cost as much mana, of course, and then we get more dex and more int. And we go all the way up here and basically just path around here just to get, these nodes are pretty good, but mainly just going over here for Mind Over Matter. And then along the way, I just filled the gems with the jewels, rather. They're basically all the same. I went for crit chance and crit damage on every single jewel. Bonuses to that would be like flat attack damage, crit damage with attack skills, elemental damage, lightning damage, that sort of thing would be pretty good. But one thing that I tried to look for as much as possible is either a resistance corruption or a attribute corruption. If you can get strength, dex, int on every single piece, that is very helpful. It'll just give you an enormous amount of damage. You can see that right now my DPS is 6.6 million. If I take off this one jewel, that's 400,000 DPS on just the one jewel. I also would recommend having at least one jewel with mana on kill. You can instead put a soul core into the weapon for mana on kill, but as long as you just have one, that'll just help you sustain your mana all the time. I'll just showcase the rest of them just so you guys can see what I went for, but basically crit chance, crit damage on every single one, with ideally a corruption of either int, dex, or strength, and then a little bit of resistances. It actually turns out, and as you can see I don't have resistance capped, it actually turns out you don't need to be resistance capped with a lot of these higher end builds because you just do so much damage. Nothing actually has an opportunity to hit you, so being capped on resistances is really not all that important. I did go for some all res soul cores here and there. My helmet doesn't even have a resistance one, but I'd probably go for like chaos res or something. Another thing that's helpful for the build is having a Olros Resolve and a Melting Maelstrom. Melting Maelstrom is basically just for bossing, but Olros is nice just for survivability. Melting Maelstrom also only costs like 1 divine nowadays, but because you have Mind Over Matter and because your mana cost is very high when bossing, this is pretty helpful. When it comes to the actual skills that we're using Tempest Flurry, and personally, I do a little bit of a different gem setup than I see a lot of other people. Concentrated effect is absolutely insane. The reduction of area effect does not matter because you get so much via having so much intelligence with Pillar of the Cage God, and this is 40% more damage, so this is just disgusting from a damage perspective. Martial Tempo is good for attack speed. Primal Armament, just straight up damage. Rage is disgustingly broken, and I'll showcase that when I do some gameplay. And then Inspiration is pretty much mandatory for a mana cost reduction because the mana cost is very expensive. When you are looking at your attack time is directly correlated to how fast you are moving. Most people that I've helped set this build up, they only get to about 0.05 because you need an enormous amount of dexterity to get lower than that. And ultimately, I prefer to stack strength for raw damage because that also gives you more life. I would say only if you have like a crazy budget do you actually end up getting this to 0.04, but that does mean you will move faster. Anything between 0.04 and 0.05 is not going to actually do anything. So as an example, if I swap one node of dexterity here and I go into strength, you'll see that my breakpoint gets changed to 0.05. So now because I'm one node away from actually being at this breakpoint, any extra dexterity I have is going to be pretty much useless until I get to about 0.006. So you want to reach these breakpoints, and then once you reach the breakpoint, then make sure that you're not overcapping it at all. You only want to look at this number, the attack time. Kind of a weird thing, but there you go. So now I'm just going to put it back because I like to have it at 0.04. But ultimately, when it comes to all these pathing nodes, just swap the nodes around to just see, try to get yourself to probably 0.06 or 0.05, whatever you can get closest to realistically. And then just the rest do strength and int and see which one actually scales your damage higher by just looking at this number. For Tempest spell, I do Persistence, Lightning Exposure, Rising Tempest, so it does more damage, Close Combat, so it does more damage, and then Overabundance. Overabundance and Persistence, I think, are mandatory when used together. And then I do Conductivity for bosses. It's actually useless to spec into Penetration on this build because for mapping, everything gets one-shotted. But for bosses, you want a little bit of Elemental Resistance Penetration. So you just put on Conductivity with the Curse tech that I do. So I just put a lot of weapon set stuff to weapon set 1 here. And then I do weapon set 2 stuff by getting increased effect of curses. And then we put that down and we just do way more damage. And I do Curse Ground and Heightened Curse. And for bosses, I will actually disable Herald Device and I will enable Cast on Shock. The reason for this is we get Eye of Winter and we just use Energy Retention, Impetus, Cold Exposure, so it does more damage, and Cold Penetration here. And this will just help us do a lot more boss damage. It has a very high mana cost, but the Heralds actually don't do anything when fighting bosses, so it's a very easy thing to swap on. And we really only use the Conductivity for bosses. Herald of Thunder and Herald Device, we want it to where Herald of Thunder is freezing enemies and doing cold damage, and then Herald Device is doing lightning damage and shocking enemies. This gives it an infinite chain. It almost doesn't matter because we have so much area of effect, but this is just the way that I have it set up. I have Ice Bite, Cold Infusion, Ambush, Glaciation, and then I have Overcharge in my Herald of Thunder. And in Herald Device, I have Innervate, Cannibalism. Cannibalism is very good because it gives 4% life on kill. You could go Grim Feast with a full energy shield setup, which is what Fubgun does, but personally, I prefer to just have all life and go for even more damage via Black Sun Crest. And then you just get life on kill and mana on kill, and you're invincible anyways. I go for Conduction, so it shocks. Long Shot, so it hits and it does more damage from far away. You could also, this one is also optional. And then I go for Precision, just so we have more accuracy rating while the skill is active. And that accuracy rating is going to convert into more attack speed via Falcon Dive. It's pretty minimal, but you can see if I take Precision off, we do lose a little bit of damage there. So effectively, this just gives you a bit of dexterity. And you don't actually need Magnified Effect in either of these because you have so much AoE via Pillar of the Cage God. Then you can see when you are mapping, you just do it. You just fly around, do an absolutely disgusting amount of damage. And one thing that is pretty nice is that when you use the Rage rune, you can see, not rune, but support gem, you can see that my damage is continuously going up there in the tooltip, up to 14 million, and that's because Rage, I'm pretty sure, is bugged, and it seems to be scaling multiple times, like off of itself. Or, I don't know, maybe it's scaling off of weapon damage. Either way, Rage is supposed to be a 30% damage increase, but it's a lot more than that, because we went from 6 million to 14 million damage, so that is definitely not intended. There is some other conditional damage that we have, but most of that extra damage that we're getting is from Rage. But as you can see, you basically just hold down right-click. The biggest problem that you're going to have with this build is not damage, it's not survivability, it's running into terrain and getting stuck. But it is unbelievably satisfying, super fun to play. It seems really brain dead, you just hold down right click, but I really enjoy it for some reason. Even though Blood Mage is technically better, which I'll showcase in a second, this is just way more fun to me. It feels a lot smoother. It's very, very nice for breaches as well. And you pretty much, just hold down right click, and it is just a great time. We got another breach here, so we can do this one. Usually Rust Bowl is a kind of crappy little small map, but figured it'd be nice for just showcasing the build. But you can see that like I'm basically full HP permanently. Anytime I kill one singular mob, I get back literally all of my mana, and if I were to take any damage, I get it all back, because every single kill gives me 4% life, and multiple percentages of mana too. I think I have 2% via one kill gem. You could also technically gain rage on melee hit on a jewel. I tried that out though, and the uptime was pretty low. But if you did that, then you could use, I believe I use Innervate on my Tempest Flurry. That is an option. But you probably want multiple of those jewels, and generally those are a little bit harder to get. Yeah, build is smooth. You just run really, really fast, and it is a lot of fun. And anytime you get low on mana, you can just use the Melting Maelstrom Flask if you ever need it. Which, I mean, the quality of life on this is just super nice. Alright, so I'll do a little Arbiter, and keep in mind he has 80% damage reduction in the start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn Herald Device off, because this has my Cannibalism in it. I'm just going to remove Precision up here, just so I have the extra buff. And then I'll turn Cast of Shock on, just for my Eye of Winter. And then I have Conductivity set to my weapon set 2. So when I put it down, it's going to swap out my second weapon. And then when I Tempest Flurry, it'll go back to weapon 1. And I'm basically just going to spam the ever-living crap out of Tempest Spell. So he's going to be charged up in a second here. I also need to make sure to use my Melting Mana Flask, but I basically just put that down, and then I'm going to spam the crap out of the bell, use the Mana Flask, and as you can see, he gets absolutely annihilated through 80% damage reduction. So we effectively did over 100 million DPS right there. And you can see we barely take any damage as well. The damage is literally just the Melting Maelstrom Flask, and then boom, instantly dead. For Zesh, just to show how much damage it looks like you're doing when it's not the Arbiter, which has a lot of damage reduction. I'm also only level 93 on this character, so I could get a lot more damage with more skill points. But I'll put down the Cursed Ground, spam right click, spam the bell, and there we go. Oh, little level up. Little easy level up. If I had more skill points, what would I want to do? I'd probably go for a lot of these crit nodes, most likely. Or I would probably try to path for another jewel. Maybe that's 4 points. Yeah, this node isn't that bad. 20% crit. Get a little bit of pen. You don't really need the pen though. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably go for some random crit nodes. I guess right here, if I were higher level, I'd probably go 3 points for a jewel socket. But up until then, I'll just go for some crit nodes. So crit damage bonus, probably a bigger upgrade for me. Got me a little bit of damage. Nothing, not too bad. But yeah, that's it for the gemling. And for the technical best build in the game, we have the Blood Mage Auto Bomber build. This build is disgusting because you move faster than any other build really can, because you're using Temporalis to just blink around, and every time you blink, you spawn sparks, which then crits with a 100% crit chance, which then spawns Frost Walls, and then you overkill the Frost Walls with a bugged interaction with Unique, causing you to infinitely spawn Frost Walls, which basically gives you infinite damage, but also instantly clears, maps. So not only is it the fastest build in the game, but it is also the highest damaging build in the game, literally doing infinite damage at a certain point. Nothing just has enough HP to withstand the amount of damage that you're doing. The reason that you want to use a Witch is because Witch gets the inherent benefit of 15% increased base critical hit chance, so it's much easier to reach 100% crit. We want 100% crit because we are using Cast on Crit, which is going to spawn a Frost Wall. And then we are overkilling those Frost Walls because those Frost Walls count as enemies technically. So then anytime that we hit those Frost Walls and we kill them, we then spawn even a whole bunch of Lightning Bolts, which does a whole bunch of extra damage. And then because we are using Trample Toe, it counts as we deal overkill damage to the Frost Wall. So we're technically overkilling it with the Choir and the Sparks. And then this overkill damage has some weird bugged interaction with gain of damage as extra type. So we have that on our wand. And we also have that as a jewel here. So we gain extra damage as cold and extra damage as lightning. And then I also think I have it up here as well. gain 8% of damage extra fire. You don't need this much gain as extra, I just have a little bit. But that little bit of extra effect plus 100% crit chance on our Greater Lightning Bolt here, and the Sparks having 100% crit, basically just gives you that infinite damage loop. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how it works because there's definitely some weird bugged interactions here, but basically all you need to know is you want to try to get 100% crit chance on your Lightning Bolt. So I have 85.05 right here, and if I blink around, because we have the Lingering Illusion here, if I blink around, then this actually goes up to 100% crit. So you only need about 85, things like 84 or 85%. One thing that this build does have as a sort of issue, quote unquote, is that when you blink, it actually costs your life because you have this base node here, where base skills have a life cost equal to mana cost. So what you want to do is have Cannibalism on, which I have here in my life remnants. So anytime that we get a kill, we get 4% of our life back, and I also have a ton of life on kill and mana on kill in my actual skill tree. First, let's take a look at the gear, and then I'll go over how I have the skill gems. This is very similar to Fubguns. I didn't really change much here. I mainly changed probably skill tree and just a few things here and there, but nothing too significant. One thing that's very important is getting 100% crit chance on Wand, and then getting a lot of gain as extra damage, at least 2 lines you want. The level of all lightning spell skills isn't hugely important, but a lot of your damage is the Choir of the Storm. So this is very important, obviously mandatory for the build, so you need to be level 84 for this to work. And then you just try to get as much crit as possible. And then on your Temporalis, you want to have a Temporalis. You need the skills to be, I believe it's minus 3.3 at a minimum, either 3.3 or 3.4. I think for Blink it's 3.4 if you're not using Ingenuity in it. And we are using Ingenuity in our Greater Lightning Bolt to kind of bypass the internal cooldown. So I believe you want Temporalis with minus 3.4. And ideally you want to get like plus as much all res as possible. And then we use Trample Toe. Trample Toe is pretty much the whole reason the build works, I believe, because of the line deal extra overkill damage to enemies within 2 meters of the enemy killed, and our Frost Wall counts as an enemy, so we do overkill damage via that. And then you want it corrupted, so this is 30% normally, but if corrupted, it goes up to 37. 36 is a lot cheaper than a 37. And then we use a Scepter. The reason for the Scepter is we need an enormous amount of Spirit because we are using Blink, Cast on Crit, Cast on Dodge, and Grim Feast for survivability, and Lingering Illusion and Charge Infusion for more crit. If you just get more crit in skill tree, you don't actually need Lingering Illusion and Charge Infusion, which might make it cheaper because then you don't need it in its series with a Spirit Corruption, and you don't need as much Spirit on your Scepter. But currently I need exactly 345 to fit everything that I have in. And I would say Cannibalism is extremely nice to have. You can supplement this with just more life on kill gems in your skill tree, or jewels, but keep that in mind. When it comes to rings, what I go for is life, mana, cast speed, and then some sort of stat, so int, strength, dexterity. You need a good bit of those to reach requirements. And then some amount of resistance. The cast speed is nice because if you don't have a base amount, your blink will be very slow when actually pressing it, so a base amount of cast speed is mandatory. And then gloves, I just go for life, mana, just for defense, and then some resistances, and then of course a high percentage Ingenuity belt to scale the life, mana, and the cast speed. You don't need the Ingenuity belt, you get like a low percentage roll, but that is nice. Olroth and Melting Maelstrom I think are mandatory for this build for mapping. The Olroth is extremely nice for survivability. And yeah, when it comes to our gem setup, very similar to Fubguns, we have Greater Lightning Bolt with Spell Echo, Considered Casting for more damage, Conk Effect for more damage, and Ingenuity to reduce the internal cooldown. Cannibalism, because we get life on kill. Blink with Second Wind, Wind Wave, Arcane Tempo, and Unbreakable. A lot of this is just stun related things, and then Arcane Tempo just so it feels faster. Cast on Crit, you want a level 9 Frost Wall, otherwise it has too much HP and does not instantly die, and it has a lower mana cost this way. Then we do Fortress, Mag Effect, Energy Retention, and Spell Cascade. If you are lagging, you can take Spell Cascade off and instead put Shock Siphon. Shock Siphon is very good for defense, but you should have enough life and mana on kill that you should not need it. But you do have a lot of Energy Shield with this build, so Shock Siphon is very good if you want to be invincible. Cast on Dodge, I went for pretty high levels of Spark. You could lower this if you felt like you were having mana issues, but the higher level Spark, the more projectiles you get, the more cast on crits you get, the more Frost Walls you spawn, the faster you map clear. Then you want Brutality, Chain, and Acceleration. And then I have Grim Feast here. Probably want to level this up in quality, but I've been too lazy. Lingering Illusion with Perfusion and Charge Infusion. You're using this, basically anytime you blink around, you spawn like this little guy, and then this guy will automatically die. Can't really see it, but it'll automatically die by you just blinking around, and then you get this buff, which just gives you more crit. If you don't have enough spirit for it, just ignore it. Just keep in mind that you want to try to get up to 100% crit with Greater Lightning Bolt, which really isn't that hard. You just go for a lot of crit in the skill tree. So when it comes to skill tree, I pretty much copied Fubgun. I maybe swapped around a little bit, but you go for a lot of energy shield and a lot of crit related things. So crit, crit, crit chance. You just want all the crit chance in the world. Then you go up here just 2 points, so you get Arcane Surge, which is just going to give you a little bit of cast speed, just 20% cast speed for 2 points, so might as well grab it. If you wanted more defense instead, you could just go for more energy shield if that was a problem for you, but it doesn't really matter. Then we go for some crit damage stuff, and then all res, crit, crit, crit. And then you need a little bit of dex so that you can actually put on cast on dodge, and you need a good bit of strength as well so that you can put on trample toe. Then we just have even more crit related stuff, some energy shield, and then we go all the way down here. I like this node because it gives reduced cost of skills, and it is scaling this, so we just get a bit more damage. You could also swap this to a small passive skills, gives you 1% mana and 1% life if you want more defense. You get to a point where you have so much damage with the build, it almost doesn't matter. And then I went for a lot of crit related stuff, just completely max this out, because honestly, there wasn't really anywhere else to put a lot of the points. At a certain point, you have infinite damage and infinite survivability, so it's like, what else am I going to do? I could grab another jewel or something, or just, more energy shield, but it doesn't really matter. And then you just even more crit. And then down here, just so meta skills gain increased energy and deal extra additive damage. And then I have allocates arcane intensity so that I don't have to put the points down here, so I just have increased spell damage here. Otherwise, you could just take some points out of this crit related stuff and just path all the way this side just to grab this for more damage. Then go down here for even more crit, and then all the way down here for more crit. And then when it comes to jewels, I went for mana on kill. I believe I have at least 2 or 3 of these, but I'll just showcase all of them. And life on kill, and it's good to get crit chance on your jewels if you still need crit chance. Otherwise, you go for crit damage just to scale your damage. And it's nice to have a little bit of increased area of effect, so your frost walls just have a larger area of effect. And if you don't get this node here, you're going to need at least 1 jewel with, I think you need 7% meta skill gain increased energy, so that every time you dodge, here I'm missing a little bit of mana, but every time you dodge, you want to be 0%, so every time you dodge, you guarantee spawn the 2 sparks, and if that's an issue for you, I think you can lower your spark level as well. But just go here for the crit, and then I'll go over every single jewel. So increased energy shield is nice for defense as well, crit chance, meta skills gain increased energy. I have the Megalomaniac, then we have energy shield, crit chance, life on kill, LE damage is pretty nice. We have crit, magnitude of shock. This is like a leftover from a spark build. Then we have life on kill, energy shield, crit chance, pretty nice. Then we have spell damage, crit chance, area of effect. And then we have energy shield, mana on kill, crit chance, area of effect. And if you wanted more defense, you could even go for more life on kill, which does feel pretty nice. But if you have cannibalism plus like 1 or 2 life on kill, then you feel pretty good. And you want at least, I'd say, 2 mana on kill, because the mana is pretty intensive for this build. I would highly recommend using either a thawing charm or a stone charm. If you're getting stunned a lot, use a stone charm, but you do have a bit of stun threshold. And you could also, alternatively, if you're getting stunned a lot, go for this node right here to give you more stun threshold. And this node also gives you some stun threshold as well. When it comes to actually playing the build, it is the easiest build of all time to play because you just spacebar around. There is a map modifier that gives you, or reduces your cooldown, like nerfs your cooldown. That completely bricks the build, so just watch out for that. Another thing is sometimes you can get stunned, so you don't want to just blink into a massive group of mobs because you could get stunned. That's where a stone charm is good, or having some stun threshold. But the build, besides that stuff, is actually disgustingly tanky because you get Grim Feast, which gives you a ton of extra energy shields. You can see I'm at 8.7k energy shield right now. But you also get the life remnants, so when you pick that up, that's basically energy or Grim Feast basically for your life. So I'm at 4,000 life. Plus we have Mind Over Matter, I believe, with the 2,000 HP there. So we are just super, super tanky, which is really nice. It's kind of weird. This build starts out being like kind of squishy, and then you end up being really tanky. You're extremely reliant on the life flasks when kind of blinking around and also getting kills, because if you're not able to get kills, then you can't refund. That was a terrible breach. There's like no mobs there. But you're a little reliant on the flasks, because if you're not getting kills, here we get another breach. That'll be nice. If you're not getting kills, and you're not getting mana and life back, and your skills have a very high mana and life cost. So anytime that you're in between killing mobs, you want to be using your life flask so that you can actually play the build, right? Otherwise, you have a bit of a problem. But as you can see, I mean, everything just dies for free. Just blink around, and it's pretty nice. I would say it doesn't feel as nice to play as Gemling. We got a little 3 breach map here. But it is undeniably better, right? I mean, you can just fly around. Everything just boop, 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 instantly dies. So much faster. I think the reason I don't like it as much is it just doesn't feel as good to play. You know, it's just a feeling thing. It feels kind of clunky. You feel at risk, even though sometimes you aren't. Is this a 10 breach map, dude? Am I gaming? You keep breaches going for a really long time with this build too, because you just how fast you are. And you do literally infinite damage. So it's by far the best build in the game. Probably the best build that we'll ever see. In my opinion, as long as Temporalis exists, we're going to have something along this line like existing. So I would say just remove Temporalis out of the game personally. If I was GGG, I would literally just delete the item. Or I would just make it not work for Blink or something. But if it doesn't work for Blink, then there's no point in it existing, to be honest. Like, I don't know what else it would really be doing. So that's my 2 cents on that. But anyways, you can see that when you don't have any mobs near you, you're not able to spam. You can still blink, but you can't get your sparks aren't casting, so you're not getting your flasks back. But one thing that's nice about Melting Maelstrom is that you get flash charges based on killing mobs. Nice little 10 breach map here. But you guys get the gist, right? I mean, just spam blink, super easy. Nothing even compares to this. This is just unbelievable, right? It's hard after playing this to want to play anything else, because it's like, man, everything is just so slow. But this is, like, disgusting, you know. It's nice to be able to get to this power level, but I think at a certain point, you shouldn't be able to, honestly. The breach just keeps going. You can just clear the entire map in 2 seconds, you know. Bosses, it literally doesn't get better than this build. This build actually does infinite damage. So even on an Arbiter here, he'll die basically instantly as long as you just have 100% crit. You'll basically do an infinite damage loop. And there's not really anything you need to do in order to execute it. You basically just spam spacebar and use your mana flask so that you don't die, and that's about it. So we'll just see this right here. But you can do this in a 4-player group, and it'll die just as quickly, and it's absolutely insane. I'll kind of just blink ahead of time just so all the sparks are on the ground. You can just blink in any order you want, and boom, he's gone. Absolutely insane. And you can see the, you know, this has the tendency to maybe blow your computer up, if that's an issue for you, but you can see it's a literally infinite damage loop. And if you're ever stuck on a boss and this is happening or something, you could just disable cast on crit, and it'll probably turn off the infinite loop. But then he's here, and make sure not to use all your flasks, because you want to be able to actually finish him off, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the new update in hopefully a few weeks or something.